Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gord McCall. I'm the Artistic and Executive Director of the Lyric Theatre here in downtown Swift Current, Saskatchewan. It's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to Lyric Digital Stage, Write Out Loud, Prairie Quills version. You're in for a real treat tonight, and our program's being hosted by Diane Miller, who is an author in her own right and will introduce all of our Prairie Quills writers this evening. Looking forward to that. Just before we start, I want to remind us, as always, that we stand on Treaty 4 land. This is the original land of the Cree, the Ojibwe, the Saulteaux, the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we are committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. We also continue to stand in solidarity with all people who are in opposition to oppression, lack of freedom of expression, and the violent suppression of free speech and basic human rights. We stand with members of the Black community, people of color, Indigenous peoples, the Asian community, 2S LGBTQ communities, people with disabilities, and all who experience oppressive marginalization and systemic racism and hatred, including injustice of that nature that occurs in our own country. Okay, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy Lyric Digital Stage Write Out Loud, Prairie Quills. Take it away, Diane.
Thank you, Gord, and welcome everyone. I'm wearing two hats for this presentation. As a member of the Write Out Loud Committee, I'd like to thank my fellow members for affording our Swift Current Writers Group, the Prairie Quills, this opportunity to produce an evening of readings for the Lyric Theatre's digital stage. Prairie Quills celebrates its 20th anniversary as a group during 2021. In the fall of 2001, local author Madeline Smid instructed an adult writing class at what is now Great Plains College. At the conclusion of the class, 6 members elected to form a writers' group. Madeline and I, hence my second hat, are the only 2 who've remained as group members for the full 20 years. Initially, we were joined by some members of the disbanded Sweetgrass Writing Group and by participants from Climax, Shaunavon, and East End. In 2005, we took the name Prairie Quills. Approximately 50 writers have participated throughout the last 20 years, annual membership numbering 10 to 12. Members are at different stages of experience, so we learn from each other about the writing process and about submitting work for publication. Belonging to a group means commitment to your writing and to supporting others. We also strive to stimulate interest in writing in the community. We do an evening of readings annually with the support of the Swift Current Library, and several members have facilitated workshops there. We've done readings at local seniors' residences, at the Canadian Mental Health Drop-In Centre, at City Hall, council meetings, and at a Swift Current coffee house. We've hosted a number of workshops led by authors affiliated with the Saskatchewan Writers Guild. And occasionally, we've organized workshops for middle years students with those same authors. During the 20 years, we've published 6 anthologies of members' work. Like many other organizations, Prairie Quills has had to move from personal to online contact due to COVID-19 restrictions. Thankfully, Zoom has allowed us to continue meeting to provide motivation and support for one another. We've also held several workshops with Saskatoon and Regina authors via Zoom, a much more affordable option for us. Another happy byproduct is that 2 former members from Climax and East End have rejoined the group, now that they can participate without driving long distances. So for this Write Out Loud, I'm pleased to present readings from several of our current members. Thank you again to the Write Out Loud Committee and to Gord McCall, Artistic and Executive Director for Swift Currents Lyric Theatre, for stitching together these short readings. Please enjoy our presentation as Prairie Quills Writers Group celebrates 20 years of weaving ideas into words, into stories. I'll lead off our readers' lineup with a story I call Unraveling Threads. Doris squinted against the sun, a butterfly free of her cocoon. It was a lovely day for a walk. The man wasn't at the front door. Doris liked that man. The sign on his desk said, Clarence. He always smiled and called her by name. Doris stumbled on a heave in the sidewalk. Her slippers didn't slide along like they did on the tile floors at Sunnyside. Sunnyside, ridiculous name. Why not something snappy? Doris glanced down at her pink slippers. Like the Pink Palace, she giggled. Pink satin shoes, pink flouncy dress. All those handsome boys whirling her in dizzying circles across the polished dance floor. Doris hummed Blue Skirt Waltz, her favorite old-time dance tune. She was startled when tires skidded and a horn blared. Doris froze, staring at the car's grill. The driver leaned out his window. Lady, watch where you're going. Doris scurried to the other side of the street and through a tall wrought iron gate. She sat on a stone bench to catch her breath. Rising from the earth around her were marble headstones, sentinels marking lives lived and passed. She lifted her eyes to the leafy elms fluttering overhead. She inhaled the heady scent of freshly mown grass. Warm, she removed her housecoat and reveled in the caress of the pine-scented breeze on her body, naked beneath her cotton nightgown. Dare ya, double dare ya. Budding breasts, a pubic mound of downy hair. Naked, deep breath, quick jump. Splashing, circling, laughing. The kiss. A shriek roused Doris, and her face flushed as she found herself cupping her breasts. She dropped her hands to her lap, but was relieved the laughter had come from across the street. Doris's attention wandered to the manicured grave sites. Dying might be pleasant enough if you ended up here. Her gaze fell on a nearby inscription. Here lies our little darling. Oh, my darling Evelyn. So sweet in that yellow embroidered dress. Evelyn. The dugout? No! The cold earth swallowing her tiny casket. Tears blurred Doris's eyes until she noticed a figure before her. She focused on a bearded man holding a pair of pruning shears. Ma'am, are you okay? I could walk you home. Doris wiped her nose on the back of her hand. I had a daughter, Evelyn, she stammered. The man repeated, I could take you home. What's your name? She struggled to tell the man what he wanted to know, but her brain refused to cooperate, her thoughts a snarled ball of yarn. With a vague wave of her hand, she turned and hurried down the path. I have to go, she said. Doris shuffled and stumbled among the grave markers. After a bit, her heart slowed. Why was she in such a rush? Coins of sunshine, filtered by the leaves overhead, shimmered on the grass. It was a lovely day for a walk. She was drawn to a weathered headstone, bathed in a shaft of light and surrounded by cheerful pansies. Most of the inscription was decayed, but she read, Ralph, beloved husband of... She clapped her hands. Ralph? She knelt on the ground and fingered the crumbling letters. Ralph, Thick black curls, dark chocolate eyes, calloused hands stroking her hair. Ralph. Doris pressed her body into the ground that she believed held her lover and drifted off into a contented sleep. Well, if it ain't Mrs. Duncan, it's Clarence come to walk you home. Blinking sleepily, Doris pushed herself up. It was the man from the desk, and the man with the beard. She yawned. Is it supper time? Where am I? As gently as though he were caring for a porcelain doll, Clarence brought her to her feet and wrapped her in the housecoat he held. Doris accepted Clarence's attentions with relief. It was exhausting to struggle against the unraveling threads of time. Doris leaned on Clarence's arm. What did you call me? She asked. Doris. Doris Duncan. A lovely name. Ah, yes, Doris. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chris Bueller. I'm a member of the Prairie Quills writing group. We've been meeting virtually for some time now, the best solution available for the circumstances we're living under today. At our meetings, we often have a writing exercise where we're given 15 minutes to complete a short piece of prose or poetry. This week's exercise was supposed to be poetry based upon titles of books. Unfortunately, I lacked the poetry gene, so ignored the rules completely and wrote the first thing that came into my head. The result amused the group well enough that they invited me to present it in today's Write Out Loud episode. Before I begin, though, I'd like to thank the members of Prairie Quills for inviting me to record this piece for tonight's presentation. And I'd also like to thank the staff of the Lyric Theatre for making these opportunities possible. I hope you enjoy the sensory deprivation tank. At first you balk at the idea of putting on this funny suit and being suspended underwater. But as is often the case, the anticipation is worse than the reality. For the first 15 minutes at least. The suit is designed so that although you are in body temperature salt water, you don't feel wet. And your head is covered completely with a set of earphones built in. And there's a hose so you can breathe. It is also carefully weighted so that you do not float on the surface, nor do you sink to the bottom. During the first period after immersion, you mentally explore your new environment, attempting to hear, see, feel, or smell something, anything. The suit is carefully made, though, so that it does not offer any of these clues. After 15 minutes by your internal clock's estimate, you begin to relax. You think about having a nap to pass the time. And strangely, you cannot drift off. The complete sensory vacuum is beginning to set off alarm bells in your psyche. It's working inexorably toward a sense of panic in the response to the nothingness in which you find yourself. This becomes your challenge, you realize, to keep the panic now tensing your throat under control. You're feeling numb. All that you can sense, you discover, is inside you, the undulating pressure of your heartbeat in your veins, a gurgle in your gut, the sound of your own breathing, the motion of your eyes in their sockets. You focus on these, learning the sounds and sensations within, precious indicators of your existence, indicators that you rarely notice in your everyday life. Presently, you are released and walk away a different person. You realize that every lesson in your future will change you, as did this one. But you are now aware of that fact. You also become fully aware of the potential for this technique to be used as psychological torture or therapy. It has indeed been used for both ends, with far more dramatic effects in the former application. Imagine being in this situation with no indication of it coming to an end. Now here comes the jump shift. This is a dramatic example of a learning experience, I grant you, but you can clearly see how it could change a person. Remember this, if you are a teacher or a mentor to someone, you are changing their lives, not just educating them. Everything you do and say in their present influences and molds them. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, and good night.
Hello, my name is Tequila Friday. Today I would like to share a piece called Mushrooms by Noon. I hear some of my siblings get up. There are 6 of us and we all share one room. I smell Dad's aftershave even before I hear his growly voice. Glendy, time to wake up and go to work, he says. I groan and roll over. I make fake snoring sounds. The soft sound of Dad's feet shuffle into the room. His dinner plate-sized hands find my ribs. He tickles me. I giggle, opening my eyes. It's time for work, Dad says. I yawn. Dad shuffles out of the room. I roll out of bed. I hurry to the dresser that I share with my sisters. I pull out a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. I hurry after Dad. I find Dad making a sandwich with leftover roast. No mustard on my side, I shout. No mayo either. Dad makes a face. With a grin, he teases. And what makes you think you'll even earn half my sandwich, he asks. You haven't picked any mushrooms yet. He hands me a bowl of berries, swimming in milk, and a slice of toast. There isn't much food in our house, so everything is shared and small portions are eaten. I slurp the milk. I wipe my mouth and say, just you wait, I'll find the biggest, juiciest mushrooms today. Dad laughs. I know that even if I don't find mushrooms, Dad will still share half his sandwich with me. He finishes the sandwich. He puts it into some brown paper and tucks it into a brown paper bag. He adds a couple of apples, some cheese, and some cucumbers. While I finish my breakfast, Dad pulls out his fiddle. He sits on a chair and raises the fragile instrument to his chin. He zings the bow across the strings. Wondering how a man with such big hands can play such a small instrument, the notes he plays are sweet jig music. Once I'm done with breakfast, I hurry to the outhouse. There is no place to stop in order to go to the bathroom. We get into Dad's blue truck. He gives me the sealer of water to hold. With the smell of diesel, the engine roars to life. Dad glances down at my worn shoes. They used to belong to my sister Lucky, and now they are mine. My toes poke out of the ends. You start school in the fall, Dad says. We'll have to buy you new shoes. New shoes? It would be my first pair ever. The trip to work is long. I stare out the window at the pastures. You know where Great-Grandpa Henry came from? Dad asks. The Red River community, I say. Good. You've been paying attention to your history lessons, Dad jokes. Why do we play the fiddle and jig? I shrug. It has to do with the sound of the Red River carts, Dad tells me. They had a certain beat. They creaked mostly, but when the supplies were loaded on them and the prairie winds blew pots and pans, it made music. The fiddler players copied it. The dancers created steps for it. I wasn't sure if I believed him. He turned off at a sign that read Cypress Hills. The winding road gave way to tall lodgepole pines. What makes us Métis? I asked Dad. Why aren't we First Nations? Métis is French for mixed blood. We are either part French or Scottish and part Cree, Dad says. We are not First Nations. We have our own unique traditions. Soon Dad stops upon a dirt road. I can hear the sound of chainsaws. Dad takes the sandwich out of the bag and leaves it in the shade on the floor. He gives me the brown bag. Remember our deal, he says. Mushrooms by noon. I nod and grab the bag from his hand. Do you know how to come out of the forest, he asks. I go in with the sun to my back. Before the sun gets to the center of the sky, I come out facing it, I say. He nods. Happy working, he grins. We get out of the truck. Dad takes his chainsaw and heads toward the noise. I look for the sun. Sometimes it's hard to see amongst the thick trees. Once I find it, I head into the forest. It's cooler under the trees. I can hear squirrels, chipmunks, and birds. I spy a patch of blueberries. I check under their leaves. Green berries greet me. This will be a good spot to feast soon. I hurry further in. I come to a ring of mushrooms. They are white. I pull one and check for worms. When I find none, I toss it into my bag. I have to walk quite a ways in before I find the next batch of mushrooms. A batch of ripe, wild strawberries distracts me. I fill my tummy with them. They are sweet and delicious, like Mom's jam. I continue to hunt down mushrooms. My bag fills quickly. Excitedly, I look for the sun, but I cannot see it. Panic sets in. I'm lost. Stay calm, I tell myself. There was another trick Dad taught me. I look at the trees for moss. The side that is the thickest is north. From there, I should be able to tell which direction I came. I hear a crack of thunder. I peer up at the sky. That's why I can't see the sun. Clouds are covering it. I figure out which way is north, and then I head towards the right direction. Rain spits on my head. I hurry through the forest, and it isn't long before I see my own footprints in the dirt. I race towards the direction of the truck. I smell Dad's aftershave. Glendy, he calls. I'm coming, I shout. I burst through the trees and into Dad's arms. I show him my mushrooms. He laughs. Wow, what a haul, he says. We sit in the truck while thick drops of rain smear the glass. Dad gives me half his sandwich with just butter on the bread, roast and lettuce. While we eat, Dad inspects the mushrooms, making sure they are the edible ones. I will be able to fetch a whole $1 for your stash, Dad says, which means I get 10 cents for ice cream, I grin. Dad sold the mushrooms later that afternoon. The hot sun beat down on the truck. He drove me to a concession stand to buy a vanilla cone. The sun melts it fast. I lick the drips and then offer some to Dad. Dad pats his round stomach. Oh no, I'm still too full from lunch, he says. Remind me to pick up milk and bread when we get to town. Tonight, your mom is making rabbit stew. My tummy growled. The best part of an evening meal was we could eat our fill. I hope I find twice as many mushrooms tomorrow, I say. Dad pats my head. I hope so too. Though the day is long, it's soon over, and we are on our way back to town, and I can hardly wait to brag to my brothers and sisters about my mushroom adventure.
Hello, my name is Glenna Gordon. I joined the Prairie Quills this winter and attend meetings and workshops from my home in East End through the magic of Zoom. Thank you to the Lyric Theatre for this opportunity to participate in this Write Out Loud digital performance. I have 2 poems to read. The first is Fear. I straddle it, a movie cowboy on a runaway horse, the animal body twisting between my gripped knees. One frayed rein dangling out of reach, its hooves pounding the turning earth, echoing my heart. The second is titled Midnight. The garden, gate squeaks open. Above, angel wings flutter. Below, the fire-skinned fellow. O soul, we did terrible things. Now I lay us down to sleep, a head of stone, our secrets to keep. Thank you very much for listening tonight.
Hello everyone. My name is Tina Marie Letwiniuk, and I have been a member of the Prairie Quills Writers Group for about 6 years. Tonight I will be reading a piece called A Holy Place. Who am I? I am a fetus, one of many, and I have a purpose to fulfill specific to me, just like each of us. The masters presented my primary lesson for this lifetime, which I agreed to, just as I have over thousands of lifetimes before. This time, the masters did not immediately accept. They always accept a fetus's agreement, and yet they withdrew. Why? What are they deliberating about? There is no choice for me but to wait for their return, for I cannot be born without their acceptance. I live in a holy place of warmth and comfort, with the hypnotic sounds of waves and continuous pulsing lulling me to sleep. This is my world, a cocoon of safety, completely dependent on the life force surrounding me. Why would I ever want to leave? Of course, the reason is to pursue my lesson and fulfill my purpose of existence. But how many lifetimes do I need to endure the same lesson? As many as it takes. The power of the answer from within takes my breath away, squeezing me from every direction. I stretch, pushing my limbs against the insistent pressure. My world doesn't feel so safe anymore. I cannot wait much longer. When will the masters return? This place of security and a life force I have depended on for so long has become too small. Or perhaps I have become too big. In that moment of self-realization, I remember the lesson learned from previous lifetimes. I have been here before, and all I need to do is remember the truth of my soul. I want out of here. My mouth moves, but there is no sound. I scream, but it goes nowhere. I push harder against what has held me captive for so long. The masters surround me, and instantly I know they have been the resistance all along. In harmonic unison, they give their final offer. My body reacts at the clarity given and received. I lengthen and push with a strength I didn't realize was possible, and as the God spark of the future is revealed, I feel the beginning of breaking free from my haven of protection. Remember, I tell myself, I must remember. Time has no meaning anymore because the time is immediate. It is now, and with purpose, I break through the barrier of what has held me captive for 9 months. As I agree to the Master's final offer, and they simultaneously accept, I am free and bring with me eternal wisdom. All I must do is remember. The muffled sounds and soothing pulses abruptly change to a world of noise and lights and confusion. Gasping, I try to adjust to this chaos, this place that is anything but holy, while my soul urges me to remember. And I do. And in those seconds of remembrance, I fulfill my lesson and life's purpose. Fighting for breath, my gasps begin to fade, and questions quickly replace memory. What is happening to me? Where am I going now? Why can I suddenly not remember? Who am I really? My last heartbeat reveals a flicker of understanding the Master's final offer of another purpose to be completed somewhere else. Transcending to another realm, I once again feel warm and safe. After all, What is death but simply another holy place? Thank you.
I'm Madeline Smith. In November 2001, I asked my writing class, who wants to start a writing group with me? 5 eager writers responded, me! And Prairie Quills began. I'm elated with the contributions made by our writing group over the past 20 years. The piece I'm sharing is my Writing Up the Curve. Hand-printed in black hardcover journal, a collection of my poems became my first self-published work. This tribute to my father for his birthday stands on my shelf. Now he is gone. The poems inside remind me of how early my spirit whispered, write, and how far I have come as a writer. Storytelling began a lot sooner. As a child, I made up stories for my first doll, Princess Grace. My sisters joined me in our dollhouse under the eaves, blending our ideas until the tale unfolded for weeks. Over time, my characters became paper dolls cut from the back of comic books, Millie the Model and Veronica and Betty. As I designed wardrobes for them, I embroidered colorful events into their lives. English literature in high school gave me an understanding of composition and exposure to great literary works. Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, and Jane Austen became my bedtime reading. University taught me the formal essay. As an adult, what I read influenced my storytelling. I loved romance and knew I could write one as good as any I'd read. I wrote long fiction, submitted, read rejection letters, received encouraging notes from editors, and typed my fingers into nubs meeting their demands. My stack of unpublished romances formed the base of my technical education, and I climbed. Co-authoring Smart Woman, a book for women entrepreneurs that became a Canadian bestseller, provided a platform and credibility. Macmillan Canada had a sterling reputation for publishing only the best. Having written a successful nonfiction book, I stayed in that genre for many years. I enjoyed the research and curiosity of getting information and sharing these tidbits with readers. And because I love passing on knowledge, I started Armchair Writers, my online writing service, as well as teaching adult writing classes at the local college. My learning curve sharpened into a straight line headed skyward. Helping an Edmonton writer turn a nonfiction course into a work of fiction, or leading a class on literary short fiction for adults, meant immersing myself in that genre until, with confidence, I could pass on what I'd learned. After 8 years of facilitating several hundred writers, I burned out. I stopped teaching and took a sabbatical. Just a year, I said, hoping rest would finger flick the dormant creativity in my brain. The year stretched to 2 and edged its way into 3. My imagination remained in a coma. Panic took hold. I needed life support. I'd told my students, "You're not a writer if you don't write." So what did that make me? Finally, I settled at my laptop, determined I would write for the pure pleasure of storytelling. I eschewed nonfiction and chose my first love, romance. Dredging up my childhood days, I wove a plot around my protagonists, became enmeshed in their flaws and strengths, their trials and victories, and found my happy ending along with theirs. I set no goals, placed no pressure on my productivity, and ended up with a publisher. In 6 years, I published 9 romantic suspense novels and a nonfiction on chronic disease I'd written earlier and revised. Seeking additional benefits, I pursued Harlequin again. I wrote and submitted 4 manuscripts. With encouraging words and compliments on my style and story concepts, they rejected each one. Authorities say writing category romance is the hardest genre because of the rigid guidelines. That truth knocked me down until, bruised and broken, I didn't get up. Discouraged, I stopped writing again. What's Newton's law? An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and in the same direction, unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. As the object at rest, I must become the balanced force that acts upon it. I needed an avenue through which I could share my enthusiasm for ideas. I chose blogging and the pleasure of exploring this genre. My creativity is awake and functional again, weaving a new story, and my heart urges, keep trying. Writers write. I know I am a writer because when I don't write, I feel miserable. A burning anger builds in my gut, projected inward at me, because I know I am starving my mind, my heart, and spirit of the nourishment they need. Words are my wings, and when I set my fingers on the keyboard and open myself to the creator of all things, they flow out of me, and I fly.
My name is Peggy Worrell, and I've been a member of the Prairie Quills Writers Group for about 15 years. I write mostly short fiction and creative nonfiction. Thank you to the Lyric Theatre for this opportunity to be part of the Write Out Loud digital stage. I will be reading an excerpt from a story about a Black settlement in the early 1900s near Maidstone, Saskatchewan. Mattie Mays is the actual name of one of the homesteaders. Mattie Mays. There's only one little square log building with a roof pointed in the middle, the Shiloh Baptist Church. A few white crosses can be seen at a distance. People are in clusters outdoors, visiting. Viola Cotton's gray curls are unaffected by the wind. Her dress is sprinkled with red poppies with black centers. Can you all hear me? Several say yes, others nod. Today we are recognizing that the RM of Eldon has declared the Shiloh Church a municipal heritage site. The Shiloh people were freed slaves. After the American Civil War, they migrated from Georgia to Oklahoma. But after the Jim Crow segregation laws were passed, there were lynchings. Lynchings, she repeats as if an emphasis is needed. Viola Cotton has no intention of mincing her words. A mother and son were lynched from a bridge in Okemaw, and grisly photos from the killings were sold as postcards. She pauses to let that sink in. It was time to move further north. A Vancouver newspaper quoted an Oklahoma immigration agent. He promised to, quote, put a nigger and a team of horses on every quarter of section of land he could get his hands on. Viola just said the N word. She actually said it out loud. My ancestors traveled more than 1,000 miles, first by wagon to Tulsa, then by train to Battleford, the capital of the Northwest Territories, then by wagon to this location. They almost starved that first winter. The hardships of farming were what they had in common with their white neighbors, what drew them together. Even so, they were not allowed to worship in white churches or use white outhouses or bury their dead in the white cemetery in Maidstone. This community was referred to as the Negro District or Colored District or Nigger District. Nobody wants to hear that. This was the first and only African American settlement in Saskatchewan. At its height in the late 1920s, the colony boasted between 50 and 75 families. They built their own school and church. All that remains is this Shiloh Baptist Church. It's constructed of poplar logs hauled by ox cart all the way from the North Saskatchewan riverbank. She points west in the direction of the river. At least 37 graves have been preserved in the Shiloh Baptist Cemetery. The traditional practices found in African American cemeteries in the United States were followed. Graves were marked with one field stone at the head of the grave and another field stone at the foot. The name of the person was placed in a bottle and laid on the grave. Then a spruce tree was planted. See those giant spruce trees? They're almost 100 years old. The white crosses were erected more recently. In early July, tiger lilies bloom among the rows. Today, we honor a woman who was born in 1858 on a plantation near Atlanta, Georgia. Martha Jane Warner was my great-great-grandmother, named Martha after her master's wife, but called Mattie. She waited on the table in the main house, shooing flies from the food. She married Joseph Mays, and they had 13 children. She was a practicing midwife. Inside the church, there's a photograph of her in a flowered skirt and lace-collared blouse. I'll now call on my brother. Jefferson Cotton faces the commemorative plaque and reads, "In 1910, Mattie Mays, matriarch, who had been born into slavery, and about 40 members of the Mays family emigrated from Oklahoma and settled in the Maidstone district. They were joined later by other families, and an extensive settlement was soon established. In 1916, a deed was obtained for Shiloh Baptist Church and Cemetery. The church had been built earlier and served the community until the settlement was abandoned in the 1940s. During that time, 48 of their loved ones were laid to rest in this churchyard. Mattie passed away after her 100th birthday and was buried near Edmonton. Erected by the Maidstone-Waseca District Homecoming 71 Committee in cooperation with the Department of Natural Resources. Jefferson Cotton takes one step back and stands at attention, eyes still focused on the plaque. People clap, then break into small clusters to visit.